Hi, I'm Ken Kessler, and welcome to the Sounds of Christmas podcast. If you're new to this podcast, I want to start by saying thanks for joining us. If you're not new to us, welcome back. Either way, I'm very glad you're here. Now, to avoid any confusion, I want to say that there won't be any music played here. This is a place for conversation. I'll talk about Christmas music and some related topics, sometimes by myself and sometimes with guests. If you're looking for music, just go to soundsofchristmas.com and click on the tree or the player on the front page or on the Listen Now page. We play the best variety of Christmas music all year long. Well, except in October, when we play the best variety of Halloween music. Today, we're joined by a longtime friend of the Sounds of Christmas, Drew Flowers. Hi, Drew.
Hey, Ken. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. Drew has a lifelong love of Christmas, as do most of us, probably everybody who's listening to this podcast. And Drew has a particular interest in Christmas movies and music. In fact, I understand you have a very large collection of both.
Without a doubt. Pretty much it started, or the part that I'm most impressed with is I got to inherit my grandparents' Christmas record lineup. And we're talking some classic records, the Firestone series, the Christmas with Sammy Kaye's, the Jackie Gleason Christmases, going way back, all the way up to some more modern stuff that's on streaming or more digital based, but really wide span collection of Christmas music, to say the least.
Yeah, and what is really cool about a lot of that is that a lot of it's not available anymore.
It really isn't. You can, if you really dig hard on the internet, you can find some that will, if you send them the record or send them, they can kind of capture it to be put more on a streaming service or some archive sites. You might be able to order the record at a much higher price, but you're really in just standard music. It's something you're not going to find just on the radio or in any kind of retail or Best Buy environment.
Right. And a lot of it takes a while to make it to streaming sites. Even if you're looking for Sammy Kaye on Spotify, you're not going to find everything.
You're really not, because there's just not a market for it. It's the Spotify's, the Pandora's, a lot of them really focus on the more frequently known artists. So if you're going to look for something more unique, you really have to find a specific group that's going to provide that.
I know I was talking to Ricky from the Sleigh Bells and Mistletoe podcast, and we both use YouTube a lot as kind of a search engine to look for some of those hard to find Christmas albums. And some of that you will be able to find there because people like you that have collected it and that have copies of these very difficult or even impossible to find things have made videos and uploaded it to share this music that can't be shared any other way.
You're right. And actually, it's funny you mentioned Sammy Kaye, that his whole album is available on YouTube. So that's like one of the few places I've been able to find it in a streaming aspect. Actually, I don't know if it happened. I think right when you got rolling with your station, I tried to see if I can get you to stream some Sammy Kaye on Sounds of Christmas. So I don't know how that went over.
I did add quite a bit of that. I play a huge variety, so you won't hear a whole bunch of Sammy Kaye in a row, but I do mix it in, and I know I don't know off the top of my head how many Sammy Kaye songs. I don't even remember how many were on that album. I feel like was it like 10 or 12?
It was, I think it's a 10-song album. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had grabbed all of those songs and added them to our library, and I try to mix them in with everything else. It's terrific. One of the reasons that I run this station and have run it and continue to run it is because there is so much of this great Christmas music that I don't want to say falls through the cracks, but does kind of get forgotten. You hear Nat King Cole at Christmas time, but you hear the Christmas song, and he had a lot of great Christmas music. And the same is true for so many artists, whether it's Frank Sinatra and Dean
is
Martin.
What makes it really unique.
Yeah. And it's tough because people don't usually just like one specific kind of Christmas music. It's not that I just want to hear the crooners, because there are other things that you want to hear too. So it's hard to it's hard to do that balance. I know that a lot of people say if you try to please everybody, you end up pleasing nobody. And I'm sure that to a degree, that's probably the case, that, if there are people who only like the Christmas music that their parents listen to, that's really stretching it, because I'm aging out into older tiers of that. So it's not just that your parents, maybe your grandparents, that they listen to, but there are people who that's all that Christmas means to them. And a lot of that music is hard to find. And traditional radio isn't going to pop in a Sammy Kaye Christmas song in between Mariah Carey and Meghan Trainor.
You're right. You're absolutely right. It's your own taste that's really going to determine how deep you want to look into it. And that goes for movies as well. When you look at movies, ironically, on some Facebook pages that I'm part of, I was having a discussion about what movie do you think is not so good that everyone adores. You know what some of the big titles were? Elf and A Christmas Story were coming up as one of the more disliked titles on some of these
Wow.
groups, but yet here we have 24-hour marathon on TBS for A Christmas Story. Here we have Elf on AMC probably 65 times in the month of December, but yet three groups with over 2,000 plus members at least saying that they're not through with those movies. And you would never think in a million years those would be the titles that didn't get high regards.
I think it's a lot like the limited playlists that traditional radio stations play. People that love Christmas music get sick of Mariah Carey, All I Want for Christmas Is You. And it's a great song. It captures that Phil Spector wall of sound kind of thing, and it's a fun song, and you get beaten over the head with it before Thanksgiving. It's just over and over. And there is something to be said for I don't want to be a get off my lawn kind of guy, but there is something to be said for the way that things used to be when you didn't hear Christmas music on the radio before Thanksgiving, and it was mixed in with other things. So you weren't hearing the same song over and over. And it's the same with movies. I mean, now you can hop on one of your streaming things, you can on Amazon Prime or Netflix or Hulu or whatever, and find Elf and find A Christmas Story, and you can watch it now in May. But you're right, when the traditional season rolls around and we get to December, those two movies and maybe Christmas Vacation also get into super high rotation. And even the people who love those movies get tired of them, and they want different things. They want some of the rare releases, some of the older things, something that you don't constantly see over and over again. And I'm guessing that's what a lot of these people on the Facebook groups were thinking about, or probably feeling, because it's not just that you see Elf, I think you said 65 times. It's not just that it's playing that many times, but when it's not playing, they're advertising that it's coming up. So you feel like you're just being bombarded by Elf, or by You'll Shoot Your Eye Out, or the Griswolds, those three over and over and over and over. And you want, the original Grinch, you want White Christmas, you want some of the older things, some of the things, not necessarily even older things, some of the things that you don't see as much. And it's tough. Not to get too far ahead, we were talking about music, and we moved into movies. Movies is another big thing that you collect. Any idea about how many?
Well, some I have a DVD collection at least of probably 65 movies. Some I can't quite yet find on DVD, so I'm still kind of dusting off a VHS version of it, as well as doing my best to try to find a way to get a stream of it. The titles that I really cherish are those VHSs actually that haven't made that traditional round of AMC freeform viewership. And you really hit something on the head when you talked about the streaming, where you could pop something in May, or you could even get, a DVD and watch it, because it's sort of taken away the value or the nostalgia of seeing it that one time a year, which made it sort of that special moment. I know for me, like, flipping through the TV guide and seeing Rudolph and Frosty were on December 16th from 8 and 8:30. That was a major event. I mean, that was something one time a year that was a magical moment for your child's life. Now it's not such a big deal because they've seen it 13 times on DVD and 14 times streaming. So why watch it on TV? But there are some movies that aren't streaming. Like, I'm going to give out a title here that's probably not too popular. It's called Came Upon a Midnight Clear. I don't know if you're familiar with that one or not, Ken. Mickey Rooney was in that one a little later in his career, and it was on every now and then, kind of Sunday at 2 o'clock on some local channel. Wasn't made well, 16 millimeter kind of movie, didn't have a lot of budget, but yet it's, one of the more heartwarming titles. Or CBS had an original movie called A Hobo's Christmas. That was a really nice one that I have on VHS that I don't think has been aired since it got a CBS 9 p.m. on a Sunday viewing in 1988. And those are the ones I really think are the ones that really need to be cherished, are these ones that haven't really made year-round viewership, but yet are outstanding movies in themselves.
Right. I mean, It's a Wonderful Life went through a time period where every station was running it long before there was Netflix. You could turn on the TV in December and flip around the dial and somebody was airing it, and it became almost a joke. And then that changed and it became an event again. It's going to be on, I think it's NBC that has it or had it. But
NBC owns it, yes. Yeah, that actually is why it wasn't. Apparently there was Frank Capra, when he made the movie, never put anything in it where any of the actors or heirs would earn a dime from the airing of the movie. Nobody got their 13-cent check. So they could air it nonstop 24 hours. You didn't have to pay royalties to any members of the movie. NBC bought the rights to say, hey, Jimmy Stewart's heirs or anybody, they would give them a check for whatever, but they would have exclusive rights. So NBC has it, but they have branched it out to some of their substations like USA, and they kind of get some airing as well. But it has to be only if NBC affiliate channels are able to air it now.
And that's a big name that everybody is familiar with that movie. Younger people who are listening may not have seen it. And that's not just me being an old guy saying that. I know I introduced my wife to that movie because she didn't like black and white movies. And it's not just a black and white movie, but it's a long black and white movie. So if you've never seen it before, you really have to commit. But it's been an event in December now, because it's not going to be, there's not an It's a Wonderful Life marathon. You're not getting bombarded with viewings of it. You get, I think they give you 2 chances. You get to see it in the first half of December, and then it will be on Christmas Eve, and that's it. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the few major Christmas movies that gets treated like that. When you were talking about It Came Upon a Midnight Clear and The Hobo's Christmas, it made me think of, I think it was Fred Astaire, the man in the Santa Claus suit. Do you remember that one?
Yes.
Yeah, I love that one, and I'd love to see that come back. And we don't need a marathon of it, but it would be nice if that would make the rounds again. And there are lots of, as you well know, there are lots of movies that are like that are just, they're little pieces of magic. And like a lot of the music that doesn't get played anymore, a lot of these movies kind of get lost.
They do, and it's sad because they're great movies. Even some TV specials. I mean, there's some that I would love to see reoccurring specials that get re-aired, even shows that are off the air. Like, even though outdone the Christmas Carol story, I think the family ties version of Michael Keaton being the Scrooge,
Hmm.
and that was a classic that I could see. I would have no problem watching once a year on Christmas Eve. I'm a big Twilight Zone fan, so Art Carney's The Night of the Meek from the Twilight Zone is a epic episode that I think deserves continual airing. And I would love to see these old shows that really grasped a really good episode at the holidays, be it 60s, 70s, 80s, and have them replayed around the holidays because they were just so well done. But a lot of people don't even know about these episodes, and it's kind of a frustrating factor.
I remember when Nick at Night started doing their thing, and they would, in December, they would dig deep into some shows that they were currently airing and others that they weren't airing but sort of fit in. So you would see an episode of Flip Wilson's show, a Christmas episode of that, or you would see the Christmas episode from the $6 Million Man. But they, of course, changed with the times. They changed their formats and changed the shows, and they went through Friends and through more recent sitcoms, and TV Land has done the same thing. And now people will go to Hulu to catch their old TV shows, and that's another kind of thing that gets lost.
Agreed. One of the pluses of streaming is that, looking for these things, you can find them, and because there's more outlets for it. But then, the downside is it's continual. So the nostalgia of that one time a year, goes away. And so it's sort of, what can we do to keep nostalgia alive, keep that emotion alive without it being a repetitive factor throughout the year where come this December you are bored with it. So I think that's where the balance, would be great to find.
And it's tricky. I know when I started the Sounds of Christmas, we went on the air at some point in October, and I got everything loaded up, and then we started full blast November and December, and when Epiphany rolled around, that was it, and I took the station down. And then we came up the next year, and I felt very strongly about that because I thought there really is some magic in getting Christmas music, a wide variety of it, the stuff that you love, the stuff that you didn't even know existed, but you love to hear it anyway. There's a certain magic of that, hearing it in the season. But what I heard from people who listened is that so many times during the year, they feel like they need that. They need a little of that Christmas spirit. And I understand. I mean, that's, right out of A Christmas Carol. I'll try to keep the spirit all the year long. So I decided to keep the station going, and I try and I hope that I'm playing a large enough variety that you're not getting bombarded with the same song over and over and over again. And that for anybody who does feel like they need that little bit of Christmas spirit, whether it's in December or whether it's in May, if you need it, we're here. With the TV shows, I can remember growing up and seeing, oh, there's going to be a Christmas episode of Happy Days this week, and getting, kind of excited about that. And those were ones that the networks didn't always rerun after they got through the sweeps weeks and they went into reruns. You didn't always necessarily see those Christmas episodes again. There's nostalgia and I hate to keep using the word magic, but there really is when you can capture that, when it's a TV show that you love and you're hanging out with your favorite TV characters, whether it's, pick a decade, whoever it is, and they get to celebrate Christmas and you feel like you sort of get to celebrate it with them. And that's pretty neat.
Yeah, you're 100% correct. You really are, and you were talking, kind of going back what you're saying, people are looking for that feeling, that memory all year, especially if they're going through a rough time, knowing it's there to go to. And that was a huge, huge aspect, especially this past year. The Christmas groups on, that I could speak of on Facebook, Christmas movies and music, or It's Always Christmas Here, just to name a few. And it's like, all year it seemed like, well, about now, about late spring, early summer, when COVID kind of started making its factor, especially last year, the membership was skyrocketing, of people who wanted to join these groups. And it wasn't always, prior years, it was more of a October to maybe January, but it was people saying, I really want something to keep me upbeat, and Christmas does that. And, a simple gathering on a Facebook page and putting up a still image of a Christmas movie or a Christmas scene really brought joy or cheer to some people that, someone that you didn't know, or brought a good memory. A simple posting of a cartoon, even like I would post Garfield's Christmas, one of my favorites, and I would have 50 to 60 comments. Oh my gosh, I haven't seen this in years, or I used to love watching this. And it would, you could feel the excitement or the heart in the person just in the comment they wrote, just off of a simple cartoon that brought back a wonderful memory. And it's great that something like that, if you can find, a trigger that memory again, really takes a bad day into a good day.
Yeah, it certainly does. And I know for the Sounds of Christmas radio station online, we could see the numbers really just exploding last year. April, May, June, July, August. Normally, I mean, there are people who do listen year round all over the world, but the numbers for people who normally listen this time of year versus those that listen in December, not even close. In December, it's off the charts how many are tuning in, and by comparison, you can count on your fingers and toes sometimes how many are listening this time of year. But last year was different. Last year, people were looking for that, and I saw it on social media. People would comment when I would post that, hey, if you need it, we're still on, and people would give the like or the heart or whatever, the little reactions, and I'd see people listening, and they're listening all over America, and they're listening in Germany, and they're listening in England, and they're listening just all over the globe. And it's really nice to be able to share that and feel like what I'm doing is, in my small way, it's bringing some comfort and some Christmas spirit to some people who need it. And music is just one of those things that can make you feel better when nothing else will.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And, I think that was, like you were saying, in a small way, making a rough year a little better. Same, and this, I couldn't agree more in how I looked at it from the groups I was a part of. If I can go and post these things, and I can post music, if I can post movies, if I can post a topic or an image of a TV guide with an airing from 1980 and just triggering those memories, or anything that I thought would help bring back a good time in our members' lives that are on our groups, and knowing that, hearing people so much better, so much, this today, I spent the day reading everything on your Facebook pages because it just made my day better. To me, that was the world. We were able to help people during this time in a very simple aspect.
Yeah, it's a great feeling to feel like you're a part of that. I mean, I don't want, I don't have a giant ego that, I don't think I'm a big deal. I feel like I'm very fortunate to be able to provide this, so that if there's somebody who's searching for some Christmas spirit, here's a way you can find it, if music will do that for you.
Absolutely.
Circling back around to your collections, I'm sure that there was a point when you're getting this movie or this special where it goes beyond just having a few of these things, and you realize that now this is becoming a collection. Do you remember when that moment hit you?
Well, there was probably two moments that really hit me. In the sense of the Christmas spirit, it was the music. Honestly, it was music that really got me going. This was years ago. I'm talking probably early '90s, early to mid '90s. things weren't going well in life. Parents were struggling financially. We were, things were rough. It was going to be a rough holiday. And I just started putting on some Christmas records, and the momentum, the mentality, everything changed to such an upbeat feeling. It didn't matter where we were in life. It didn't matter how things were going. Just things were great because the music was bringing out the best in everyone. And that's when I think I understood what Christmas can be and what the power of the holiday really was. And I dove into it, full fledged. I dove into it. There were just these aspects that I knew I really loved. So, of course, it wasn't something that was universal. It wasn't like I was finding my neighbor or someone that shared this adamacy with me until I started playing around I found groups on Yahoo, and I found a Christmas movies and music group, and I started looking, and I said, "There's others that are like me." And so I joined this Yahoo group, and I started, and then people were sharing the same things as me, sharing the same interest as me, had the same love year round for the movie and music genre, and it just grew. And I started, and then more I realized that it just kind of it spiraled from there, and I'm thrilled that I was able to build on this, because it's one of the best things I have. These titles bring so much happiness to me, my family, and other people that I can share it with now.
Because of technology, now it's so much easier to find things. When, I had mentioned using YouTube as a search engine, you really can. You can go on YouTube and you can type in the name of the artist and Christmas, and if they don't have an official release on there, somebody has posted it on there and you can at least hear it. One of the examples I often use is in the 70s, Billy Joel, when he was on tour, I don't remember if he was promoting The Stranger or 52nd Street, but in December in concert, he likes to perform Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas. And a recording of that was made available to radio stations, and it was a bootleg, and the quality was so good that some radio stations didn't know and were playing it. And I was searching for a copy of that for years and could never find it. But now you can plug that in on YouTube and you can find recent recordings of that Billy Joel has posted on his own channel that he's done in concert. And it's just such a treat that you can find things like that now. It's almost, to a degree, it's almost too easy. A lot of these older things that we were talking about a little while ago, and you had mentioned Perry Como, and we talked about Sammy Kaye, a lot of those things, because of the generational differences, those are harder to find.
It's interesting, yes. And now it seems like, from what I've learned, especially like when I mentioned Perry Como, it seems like when we're talking about the radio stations, the FM stations, I think he still finds his way into the Nat King Cole, Burl Ives, Bing Crosby, Frank Sinatra. You still can catch him, especially when his version of "'Twas the Night Before Christmas." Mm-hmm. It does get some popularity, as well as I do hear his version of "God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen" every so often on some local FM stations around here.
And you're right, Perry Como, there are a handful of songs that do make it onto traditional radio stations, but he's another artist that he recorded so much. And there's the Perry Como Christmas specials that you can find some of those on YouTube, but otherwise those are kind of in danger of becoming one more thing that's lost.
True. It is that is something that is in danger of kind of becoming an archived aspect that not only the really true followers are really going to try to find or try to keep alive as best as possible through kind of underground streaming services.
Since we've been talking about movies and music, and I want to sort of combine the two, because one of the things that I love about Christmas movies, and to some extent Christmas TV specials and Christmas TV episodes, is the music. So many great Christmas songs are attached to movies and TV specials, and in a lot of cases they're only available as part of those. Do you have any particular favorites that fit that?
Um, there's a lot of songs that aren't that aren't long. They're not ones that are probably going to be on the radio, but yet they really capture the moment. A lot of them are in those animated specials that I found that I wish there was a collaboration of songs that we could get that like would be from these not so common Rankin and Bass cartoons that, it was like the Rudolph Burr Lives. They're great songs, but they're played. And my favorite song is when they get to the island of misfit toys and they're singing about Christmas Day being here. And that really never gets much on the radio. It's more Rudolph or Silver and Gold and some of the other ones, but there's sort of these other songs from these specials that are really heartfelt that just don't always get the publicity.
Yeah, I was going to say one of the more recent ones, but I know it's been over 20 years. At some point, I think it was in the early 90s, actually, so it's been maybe close to 30 years. There was an animated Christmas special called Olive the Other Reindeer. Do you
Yes,
remember that one?
yes, I sure do.
Drew Barrymore was the voice of Olive. For those who don't know, this was based on a children's book, and this is Olive is a dog, but when she hears all of the other reindeer, she thinks it's all of the other reindeer and it's referring to her, and she wants to save Christmas, so she's headed to the North Pole. That's the premise of the cartoon. There's a really charming, fun song in there that she sings, and the backup band is Big Bad Voodoo Daddy. And it's really nice. And I was able to get a copy of that when I was in radio. So it's something that I play on this station. And it's one of those that, it means something to me. And I'm hoping that for people who remember this special, that it will give them that bit of nostalgia, that bit of Christmas magic that we've been talking about. But that's one of those that, oh, I just love, and I wish that there had been a soundtrack from that. I know one of the guys from REM was in that, and they did a song, and it's really cute. I don't know if it's on any streaming service. I had gotten the DVD when it came out. I'm not sure if it's even still available, because it's just one of those like others that we've been talking about, one of those lesser known ones that sort of just falls between the cracks, I guess.
Yeah, no, I know the exact. I know that I'm definitely familiar with that one. That was a great one, and yeah, it really, unfortunately, it didn't move on in the sense of like yearly tradition, and it seems like the newer ones, or I mean, 90s on, I would say it's if you look at the yearly rotation, the Frosties, the Rudolphs, the original How the Grinch Stole Christmas, they really unless there's a mass media for it, like the Minions I think just recently came out with a Christmas special, and they air a Toy Story one, and unless there's a big market value, it seems like just the older classics are the ones that still get the yearly recognition, and anything kind of newer out that maybe last 20-25 years is a real struggle maybe to really get a yearly renewal to kind of keep it going as a memorable cartoon or animated special.
Yeah, there was, and I feel like this was another one that was recent, but it's probably been 15 years, maybe more. There was a new animated version of Frosty the Snowman featuring Burt Reynolds. Do you remember that one?
Yes, yes.
I actually have Burt singing Frosty the Snowman from that. And one of the first years The Sounds of Christmas was on, that was one of the most requested songs, that particular version. And and it's cute. And if that special came out when you were watching when you were into that and that was the version of Frosty you connected with, that's a little piece of that Christmas magic, Christmas spirit that we've been talking about, that hearing that will reconnect it. But that's another one too that just didn't seem to have whatever it took to be an annual event. The other version of Frosty that we all know with Jimmy Durante narrating and singing Frosty, that's the one that comes back year after year.
Yeah, Frosty, that cartoon has had some different variations or styles, and only certain ones, like you mentioned, the Jimmy Durante, and they still air this sequel. It's called Frosty Returns, and actually John Goodman does the voice of Frosty, and
Mm-hmm.
and it really wasn't a very well liked one from from what the groups I'm in have mentioned. It really didn't aid. People thought it wasn't done well. They didn't like the storyline, and yet it still kind of gets CBS still kind of gives it a go after the original Frosty. But yet there is a special called Frosty's Winter Wonderland, which is the original voice of Frosty. It's him coming back, and it's a Rankin and Bass animation, and it's not bad. It flows nicely, but that sort of got pushed aside, even though it's an original character voice. It has a better story. A lot of the Christmas movie lovers have said, this is the true sequel. It doesn't get really any airtime, and they still kind of stick with this John Goodman one, but that really the real fan base is not fond of, and it's very interesting. And then you mentioned the Burt Reynolds version that kind of got pushed on the aside, but yet they're still kind of hanging on to this one sequel that isn't really loved.
And it's interesting because you would figure big name star power would matter, but it doesn't. I mean, Burt Reynolds, not a big name now, really, in the grand scheme of things, not as well known, but at the time everybody knew who he was, and that he's voicing Frosty. That seemed like that would be a big deal. It seemed like it would be an obvious hit, and yet it didn't work. I know that there have been different versions of Rudolph. There have been sequels. There have been other takes on it. I know there was one version. It had some different songs. It had one of the songs that we get a lot of requests for is called Christmas Town by the Pointer Sisters, that came from that particular version. But still, the Rankin and Bass original one is the one everybody seems to know, and that's the one that keeps coming back.
Yeah, I know. Have an exact timetable. There was a Rudolph in the Island of Misfit Toys that they did that I think went straight to video, and it really kind of was an in and out. It didn't really get any airtime. Every now and then you can catch Rudolph and Frosty's Christmas in July or Rudolph's Shiny New Year, but they really none of those really ever got close to the level of popularity that the original Rudolph has had. And that's one of those diehard year after year fan bases, and CBS has really held on to that one with an iron grip to make sure that they haven't. Just recently, Freeform got the rights to air some of them, and it kind of made the original fan base a little upset because they felt that was only a CBS, shouldn't go anywhere else. So that fan base is very loyal.
Do you remember, this probably would have been in the early 80s, I think. I think it was a TV special, Ebenezer Scrooge's Rock and Roll Christmas.
That does ring a very similar bell.
It was a very convoluted story, but the main thing was all of the musical guests, because they had all these members of different 60s bands that were on, so that some of the members from Three Dog Night were there, and they did Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree, and there were members of the association, and they did Happy Holidays, I think. The story itself was forgettable, but the music was really kind of neat, that they had all these acts. They had Mike Love of the Beach Boys was there. I believe he was singing with Dean Dean Torrance from Jan and Dean. It was terrific that they had all this great music, and that's something that the special has disappeared and the music has disappeared. You won't find it on any streaming services. You can't get the CD. I don't know that it ever was available on a CD, so you can't get it from Amazon. But that's one of those things that has just disappeared, and it probably only aired once. And I just,
Yep.
and I'm just such a Christmas junkie that I happened to catch it because, and I'm sure you probably did something similar when we got the TV guide, I went through and circled all the Christmas things that were coming up that I needed to make sure that I could try and watch, or that I could, in the later years, I could get our beta VCR to record and hopefully save. And that was just one that I just happened to catch. And of course it was recorded on beta, and I have no idea whatever even happened to that tape. So maybe that's one of those that will wind up on YouTube one of these days. But
yeah, there's a handful of them. I'm going to throw one out. Maybe you know it. I really haven't found anybody that's seen it. I'm almost convinced I might have been the only person that's ever watched this one. It was around mid 90s on NBC. There was a special called Al Roker's Countdown to Christmas. I don't know if that rings any bells or not. It was probably about 94, 95. And it was Al Roker, and he was going to be doing a countdown to the takeoff of Santa's sleigh. And this was forgettable. It was not a great special. Santa had put jet power on his sleigh, and the reindeer were going on vacation. And it turns out he got the countdown clock. Lisa Gibbons was on it. All the whole NBC Today show at that time had little parts, and 3, 2, 1, and the jets don't go off, and Santa can't go, and they got to track down the reindeer, and they're in all different parts of the U.S. on vacation, and they're not sure if Christmas is going to make it. And eventually, they put it all together, and it's saved. And Al Roker hosted this. It was supposed to be like a generic live show, and there we go, and it's over, and it's stuck with my head since that time, and I have, like a bloodhound, hunted this thing to the point where I emailed Al Roker, and on his website, he did respond saying it was made by Mopo Productions, which was a Maury Povich production company that went out of business. And I started looking up people who worked for Mopo Productions on sites, and I said, "Hey, any chance you got an old copy of this movie, on your resume that you could send me?" And I've gone to Turner Classic Movies. I've gone to every outlet, and either nobody's heard of it, or yeah, I've heard it, but there's no existing copy of this, and YouTube doesn't have it. And I've been hunting probably a good 20 years to try to find somebody that has this movie, and nobody knows what I'm talking about.
It's funny, for people who don't collect, I don't think they can understand what it's like to be looking for something for a long time, and then you finally find it. What a terrific feeling that is. I can think of so many songs that I couldn't get and I couldn't find, and then one day somehow magically I got them. I remember in the 90s, the UK group The Corrs
Okay.
had this was just when they were starting out, and they had recorded John Lennon's Happy Christmas and a version of Oh Holy Night. And I don't play a lot of versions of Oh Holy Night on the Sounds of Christmas because it's hard to play that kind of song year round. That's something I feel anyway. It's something that should be in December. And there are a lot of versions that I just don't think that they're it's just a special song. But the version that the Corrs did of this was so beautiful. It was just wonderful. And the record label had sent it to me, and this is maybe 1998. So the internet is starting to really it's really going now, but MP3s were still kind of a new thing. and they had sent this to me on MP3s, and I could play it on my computer, but I couldn't figure out how to get it out of the radio station. And I couldn't. And then I went to a different station and I didn't have it. And I spent years trying to track it down. I even was able to email with one of the sisters in the Corps about it, and she knew what I was talking about, but it was one of the first things that they had recorded, so she didn't know who had it and couldn't find it and had no leads for me to go on. And it was one of those things that I'm just searching and searching and searching. And then finally, and this was probably in the last few years, finally I was able to find someone that had it. And it's a treat to be able to play this now. And I know that most people listening don't care and have no idea on what it's like to be looking for those things. But for those who are listening who are collectors, I know you get it. You're looking for something and you're hoping that somehow you're going to come across it. And it's just such a great feeling when you find it. And it's so much easier. I was talking to Ricky from the Sleigh Bells and Mistletoe podcast about this. It's so much easier to find things now than when I was first looking for records and going to used record stores and searching the stacks. And I'm sure you probably did that too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Still do.
Yes. And you never know what kind of treasure you're going to find.
You don't, that's the beauty of it. You're just going to see what can I find. And, I ended up finding, I went to a local Goodwill, and I was just, let me just dig around in the records a little bit. And the next thing I know, I found Christmas music from the organ at St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City on record.
Wow.
And was like, oh my God, I mean, just froze in place that I just found this diamond in the rough, and the places, a collector goes, I can't tell you how many things I found at yard sales that I go to that someone's selling for $1 or $2 that turns out it's worth worth a heck of a lot more than these people's. That's why I tell people who are saying, I'm looking to collect. I said, get up early, get a cup of coffee, and go to yard sales, because I found records, I found cassettes, I found Santa Clauses that I collect at yard sales, and they're dated and they're worth a good chunk of money. And these guys were selling them for $2-3, and they don't really know what they have, and you do. And that's why you have to go to these off niche places to really find things that aren't, that if you really are hunting, you have to know where to look and where the hidden gems may be.
Have you gotten to the point where you can't pass by a used record store without going in?
Oh, absolutely. So used record store, a Goodwill, I want to go in, and that's the first time, like, where's your record section? Because a lot of records I found were there. I mean, if I see a yard sale, I'm going to kind of look around, like, music for sale, because those are the places that they're going to sell something that is priceless to you, that to them was not worth anything.
Yeah, I remember in the early 80s looking through, you remember cutout bins?
Oh yeah.
Okay. For anybody who doesn't know, record stores, and sometimes stores that weren't record stores, would have a little bin that had a bunch of records in them. They called them cutouts, and there was a little cut in the album cover.
Mm-hmm.
And these were things that, for whatever reason, didn't sell. And they're all very cheap, and they're marked down to, please buy this stuff and get it out of our store, that kind of thing. And I remember that's where I found an album called In Harmony 2, which was an album of famous singers and bands doing children's songs. And that was the record that had Bruce Springsteen's Santa Claus is Coming to Town.
Oh, there you go.
At that time, that was the only way you could get it. And this was like the holy grail of Christmas songs. And I was, and I found it, and, and it was maybe $2.99 for this album, and I had to have it. And I then add that to my collection, and that was terrific. And then, since then it turned up on the B side of a single, and it's on so many different Christmas compilations, and now it's streaming, so you can just find it and just listen to that one song. You don't have to buy anything else. But at the time, it was one of those things that was just nearly impossible to find. And the thing about that is, for a collector, if you stop, and I think this was like a Woolworth drugstore that I had found this in, and when you stop there and you look through the record, the cutout bin, and you find something amazing in there, for a collector, that means you can't pass by another cutout bin ever again, because you just don't know what's in there. And you have to
without a
look.
doubt.
You have to check. You have to go in the used record stores and ask them, you have a special section with your Christmas music? And they'll probably roll their eyes, but they'll point you in that direction, and you'll go look, and they may tell you, no, it's just mixed in. So that means you got to go through everything. And I have done that so many times. But as a collector, you get rewarded. You find something, and it makes it all worthwhile.
100% agree. Let's say I've had that luck with flea markets too. You go there, and there was one near my house that's about 15 minutes away, had some 80s nostalgia and stuff, but they also had a bunch of Steins, beer Steins, some German logos, some Clydesdale, and I'm digging around, and all of a sudden I find a Stein that has an etched picture of an Ebenezer Scrooge on it. It's Scrooge. It says Scrooge on the top, and it's got an etched picture. And I look, and it said Avon. So I grabbed my phone, and I'm looking, and they hadn't made it. They made it in so it was about, I mean, not ancient. It was probably 71, 72, but they haven't made another model version of that since, and it was out of production, and they were selling it on eBay for $85 and such. And I asked, how much is this? $5. So sold, and and here it is every Christmas on display. And I mean, I didn't know what I was going to find. Next thing I know, this out of stock, no longer printed Stein of a Scrooge logo on it was sitting right there. So you got to sort of dive into the rubble and just dig and dig and dig, and you never know what's lurking on the other side.
Drew, you're really good at helping to keep the Christmas spirit going strong all year long. You have mentioned a couple of the Facebook groups that you're a part of, that you help to moderate. How many different Christmas groups are you a part of?
As a moderator, or in general?
Both.
As a moderator, let's see. We have Christmas movies and music. Probably the first one that got me going. It's Always Christmas Here, which also has a subgroup. It's Always Fall and Halloween Here. So I kind of have for fall Halloween purposes and for Christmas purposes. Then I also have Christmas Time's a Coming and Christmas All Year Long. Those are ones I'm moderators of. And then in general, so that's probably in general, I'm in probably 12 to 15 Christmas groups on Facebook, but I moderate 4, possibly soon 5. There's a possibility I may be getting another group to be a moderator of as well. So I try to do as many as I can to do what I can to keep the Christmas spirit flowing.
One of the great things that I find with these groups is that it adds a little Christmas to my social media feed. Besides my own Sounds of Christmas on Facebook and Twitter, to be able to, as I'm scrolling along and I see here's a friend posting a thing about their cat, and here's somebody posting some political rant, and here's some other news story, and then boom, There's a picture of a cottage in the snow, and it's all decorated for Christmas, and it just and it just stops me every time, and it's such a nice feeling. And I know it's not for everybody, but I'm pretty sure it's for everybody who's listening to this podcast. And if you're not a part of these groups, go check them out on Facebook. Just do a search on some of the names that Drew mentioned and take a look. They're really good about keeping it on topic. So you don't have to worry that you're going to get into one of these groups and somebody's going to try and indoctrinate you into their religion or their politics or whatever. It's a lot of what we've been talking about today. And it's just about recapturing that and keeping that going and finding somewhere where you can dip your toe in the Christmas pool and get that good feeling. At the beginning of the Sounds of Christmas podcast, I always mention we play the best variety of Christmas music all year long, except in October when we switch to Halloween music. And you mentioned a Halloween group. Halloween's another holiday high up on your list, of course. Do you also collect Halloween movies and music?
Oh, Halloween, yes. I grew up on a Halloween environment. My sister was a horror movie fanatic, so I was exposed to it probably, at 5 years old, watching these horror movies. And so, without a doubt, yes, I've always been a fond Halloween fanatic. The season of fall. So I felt if I have a strong love for Halloween, why not share that with Facebook as well? And there's definitely a market. The Halloween groups are just as, if not sometimes more involved than the Christmas groups because they love their season too. And it's great to see one group talking about the snow scenes that you mentioned in the movies, but then at the same time you go to another group and there's post about Night of Living Dead or a scene of Salem, Massachusetts, with leaves falling and stuff like that. So it gives you kind of the best of both worlds on movies and different times of the year that you just happen to be very partial of.
Yeah, I love Halloween, the Halloween season, the whole month of October. I feel like it is its own thing. And it also feels like I get that sense that Christmas is coming. It's not time yet, but it's coming. Sometimes there's a little nip in the air. There's all the things that you associate with fall. Football is heating up, leaves are falling from the trees and all that kind of stuff. Pumpkin patches are popping up. And if you don't have a pumpkin patch near you, then your grocery store, your local Walmart have pumpkins out. And there's something that's really cool about that. In and of itself, I think it's a neat thing, and I love Halloween. But it's both, because it also has that feeling that I know right around the corner it's finally going to be Christmas time again. And I love both of those things. With the Halloween movies, the violence in some of them is just, it's not my thing. But I do like the scary movies. And more so, I like the ones that are creepy but funny. Addams Family, Beetlejuice, those kind of things. I always enjoy those. And of course, the music. We do go all Halloween music for the whole month of October. And I've actually been working on that today, putting things together. I have so many new songs to add this year. And it's not just new songs that came out in 2021. It's new things that I've discovered that, from the last, 50, 60, 70 years. So it's the same kind of thing that you get with the Sound of Christmas in December. It's that sort of a mix of all genres, all different kinds, all eras, all different kinds of singers. And it's all spooky songs. And it's funny, I get into discussions often about what makes it a Halloween song. And for me, and I love your opinion on this too, Drew. For me, it's if it's a song about something that is creepy, supernatural, if there's a ghost in the story of the song, then yes, that fits. And I will have some people who will tell me that, well, that's not really a Halloween song. And there's a Johnny Cash song called Delia's Gone. Do you know that one?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I don't think this is a spoiler for a song that's that old, but the story is about a guy who kills his wife Delia, and he goes to jail. He gets caught and he goes to jail. And near the end of the song, he can hear her footsteps around him in the jail cell. And I feel like that little bit of creepiness at the end makes it a Halloween song.
I think everybody loves a little bit of a creepy feeling, maybe not blood and guts gore, but just a spooky feeling and stuff is something we get a charge out of. We love having that kind of that vibe or that feeling. So if a song has it or or even a movie or a special that just gives you that spooky feeling, it's something that's going to stick with you and you're going to listen to it, you're going to watch it again the next year, or it's just going to become a part of your tradition for the month of October at the very least. And one of the ones that always got to me is there was an old radio show. It was called The Hermit's Cave, and it's to me, the layout's very similar to Tales from the Crypt. It starts out with this sort of creepy sounding character that introduces the story, and then it goes into the story, and he closes out back into the character, finishing up the story. And I was in school, and there was a drama teacher had us do it and put it on, and it's all in your mind and you're hearing it. It gave chills up and down my body, this radio show. So now it become part of my October tradition to listen to a few episodes of The Hermit's Cave. And then things like the War of the Worlds from Orson Welles, the notorious broadcast that was October 30th. That's something I always put on my Halloween groups because it's a masterpiece because it's all in your head. And that's what makes the best parts of Halloween is what can get into your head to give you that chill.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Usually, I don't remember if we did it last year or not. Usually in October, when we get to the last couple days, I'll play that Orson Welles War of the Worlds, and I'll almost always follow it up with the Jeff Wayne musical version from the 70s that had Justin Hayward from the Moody Blues, and it's a really neat retelling of that story with very dated 70s music. The song Forever Autumn that Justin did on his own and also with the Moody Blues is also a big staple of our Halloween playlist. That's just one of those traditions. And we could probably fill another hour talking about Halloween traditions. But it's so nice to talk to a kindred spirit in the collecting world. And I'm sure there are other people who are listening who also collect, maybe not as much as you and I do, but who also collect some of these things. And it's nice to feel like you're not the only one.
Absolutely. I hope, yeah, and don't think you're the only one that just loves the holiday year round either, be it Halloween or Christmas. There's a lot of us out there, and just find your niche and find that group on Facebook or streaming, and don't feel like you're an oddity because you do.
Yeah, definitely. Drew, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me. I had a great time.
Thanks again. And thank you for listening and helping this podcast continue to grow. We're now on around 24 different podcasting sites. And since you're listening to this now, you've obviously found us somewhere. But if there's another site you'd like to use for podcasts, check out our podcast page on our website for the complete list of everywhere you can listen to the Sounds of Christmas podcast. And the website is www.soundsofchristmas.com. Then just click on the podcast tab. For the Sounds of Christmas station, to listen to the music, you'll need to stick with our website or our app in the Google Play Store. In the meantime, thanks again for listening. If you have comments or suggestions, feel free to reach out to me on social media or through our website. And may you always believe in Santa Claus.